All right. It's another, 10 seconds after the previous video, and it's still this Homeric Rhapsody thing where I'm like drafting out a story in real time off the top of my head and without any notes. You can see that I'm not looking at any notes. A story that I'm creating about Achilles raiding the city of Thebe, Eëtion's city. In what I've declared as the first or the end of the first year of the Trojan War, and the king and his queen are both leading forces to leave the city and try to head off Achilles before he can besiege them. I don't know if that's the best tactical choice or not. I figure. Well, I actually did. I created the plot device that they have seen how the Achaeans surrounded Troy, and they don't want, I guess, the implication being that they figure that Achilles is the first force coming at them, and that they don't want the entire more Achaeans to, besiege the city, that they wouldn't be able to escape it, so that they're trying to take them out. I forgot to add one important plot point to this. I'm going to see if I can shoehorn that in there, and let's see if we can make it a nice, elegant thing. We'll see what happens. Here we go. Thus did the king and his warrior queens speak to their men. And finally, the king said, before setting out, to one of his attendants, the herald Eurymedon, he said to him, "Glorious Eurymedon, go back to the city, to the dungeons, and take up that captain of the Dolopians, Phoenix, aged and wise. For we have not treated him unfairly. We have fed him and we have clothed him, but he has not spoken to us, nor has he given us any information. I shall tell him of what is to come, and perhaps he will offer some sort of support as we approach, for his information would be invaluable if we know anything there is to know about this Achilles and his force of Myrmidon soldiers." And thus did the herald go towards Phoenix, and found him in his cell. A cell it was called, but it was grand and spacious, and it featured with a plush bed and many comforts of home, with several changes of clothes and many warm towels and blankets and things with which to clean his person. And Phoenix was sitting at his table eating fruits that had been only just put out for him, but brooding in his heart every moment for the past year that he has spent away from the Achaeans, not knowing who alive and who dead, and most of all, worrying for his charge, the young Achilles, who had been entrusted to him by his lord father Peleus, who he loved like a father of his own, though he was equal in age. And the herald said, "O Phoenix, lord of the Dolopians, the great king Eëtion, lord of Thebes, protector of the Cilician realm, he requests that you come with the army as we approach an oncoming Achaean force. We know that you do not want to act against the Achaeans, and that you would not do anything to harm them, but we ask that you accompany the army, and we do not send force, though it should be known that force will be sent if necessary. So the king asks first, politely, if you will accompany this force with us and stand at his right side." And Phoenix inwardly overjoyed to think that he will be able to see the Achaeans from across the lines, or gain some intelligence on what has happened to the many ones of his friends and advisors and comrades who he lost at the island of Aulis. He immediately sprung up, and he said, "O herald, tell the king that I will be on my way, that I will take up my things, and I will bring my arms and armor, though he may lay hands on them, and I will not take up arms against him. It is enough for me to see the Achaeans and know some small part of what is happening." Thus, having said this, the herald went back to Eëtion, and making their preparations as Phoenix prepared to leave, they all gathered. And up in Olympus, as they were doing this, each of the Olympians sat on their cloud banks. The Sky Father, the Lord of Lightning, and the loud Thunderer, he spoke to that ox-eyed queen of his. He said, "Hera, these Thebans of Eëtion's town, they are preparing quite the force. How will you protect your favorite, this Achilles, unproven in battle, as he approaches the city? What is it that will stop this massive force of Cilicians and Amazons from surrounding and slaughtering him and his small force of picked men, doughty though they be? Because even if they are the best that Phthia has to offer, there is at least 10 of these enemies for every one of the Phthians." And Hera said to him, suspecting some trick, something that he must be planning that she does not know about, she said, "O Lightning Father, I have my own ideas about what will protect Achilles and his men. I will be forming up the forests and the trees around the riverbank that he plans to cross, and I will make it so that not a single man can be seen behind the trees, only a few, and that their force, though small, will seem grand as they throw their spears from across the bank and never show the full size of their force. And thus will they be able to keep at bay a much mightier army than their own." Artemis heard this, and she brooded on the inside, but knew that she would not be able to overturn the dictates of that ox-eyed Queen of Heaven. And thus she sat plotting her own ideas for how to help these Cilician Thebans and Amazons who she held so dear. And she thought to approach Enyalius, that great lover of slaughter and death on the battlefield, who was the father of the Amazon warriors, and to see if some plot could not be hatched among the two of them. But this was not yet to be, as they needed to bide their time until the time was right. All right. A couple interesting things. So the thing I said I had forgotten, the plot point, which I spent so much time trying to develop, but then I forgot to add it, was that they had held Phoenix captive. The Phoenix, the advisor and guardian of Achilles when he was a child, and that Achilles respects most out of anybody in the army. And then I forgot to actually put him into the plot line when the Eëtion's army and Queen Tecmessa's army leave the city. So I had it where he would send a herald to Phoenix, and that Phoenix would agree to join with the force, not in comradeship, but rather just like to go with them as like a captive. It was a weird thing because I had the herald say a lot of stuff that like nobody told him to say. If I was better, more organized, I would have had Eëtion say it, and then the herald would say it again. But I couldn't think of all that stuff at the time, so I just had the herald like speak way out of turn. But whatever, it worked. And I figure, because again, I had mentioned this in a previous episode, but so the other thing is that I am the outline of this story would be based on the story of Cú Chulainn and the Cattle Raid of Cooley, the Irish legend, which is all sort of leading up to. And the original idea for this whole thing was like, it would be interesting if you based that off of this, and Achilles was in the Cú Chulainn role because he's sort of like the Irish Achilles anyway, and you would invent a warrior queen to play the role of Queen Maeve, which I've made into Queen Tecmessa, the Amazon wife of the Eëtion, and then that they would have captured Phoenix, and he would be in the role of Fergus, the exiled Ulster king or whatever he is, who kind of advises the Ailill and Maeve against Cú Chulainn, because he had like raised or at least known Cú Chulainn as a child. So I figured he kind of fits the Phoenix role. And so all of that to say, like, you'd have to have Phoenix with the army for it to make it, any of my ideas to make any sense. So I kind of brought that in, and then I had the action just go back to Olympus. I always think it's interesting, like, those are some of my favorite parts in the Iliad, where like the Olympians are bickering and coming up with plans alongside the humans. And the most interesting parts are when they do stuff that like mimics, or not mimics, but like mirrors what the humans are doing. Like when Paris talks about how he's never been so overcome with lust, not even when this and that and this. And then Zeus says the same thing a few books later about Hera and all the women that or the mortal women that he's like seduced or whatever. I think that's cool. And there's always like fun parts, because like there's clearly like a very complicated web that Homer created. And I didn't necessarily write anything that interesting, but I like that we're cutting back and forth to Olympus. And I established this plot line where, so one thing is that Hera just told Zeus her plan and told the viewer her plan, or the listener, which is something they do a lot, where it's like Zeus is saying like, oh, well, I'm not going to do this until, Hector kills Patroclus, and Patroclus kills Sarpedon, and then Achilles kills Hector. And it's like, wait, what? That didn't happen yet, and they kind of tell you what's going to happen before it happens. So you're almost in this like omniscient role. And so Hera is telling the plan that I'm going to make it so the forest is so thick that the, Thebans can't tell that it's a small force approaching. Because the way I've had it is that Artemis warned them that Achilles' army is coming, but she didn't say that it's only a small force. And so the Thebans assume that it's the full-size force of Myrmidons, and they don't realize that it's only a little force of picked men. So they're almost going to be doing like guerrilla warfare against the Thebans. But that's my plan anyway. And so Hera is like explaining that she's going to make the forest thick enough that it can cover them and make them seem like a bigger force than they are. And then I came up with this thing that Artemis heard her plan, but that she can't overturn Hera's plan. So she's going to plot with Ares, who Ares is like the father of, I'm pretty sure he's the father of all Amazon women. So it just makes sense. Like, I thought of it in the middle of saying it, but like, or of telling that part where Artemis was talking or thinking, like, well, it would make sense if Ares was took part in this. So I kind of defrayed that till later, where it's like they're gonna come up with a plan and then, try to enact it later, and we'll see what they come up with. I don't know what it will be yet, but there's some machinations happening and stuff. It's kind of interesting. I'm interested to see what we do once we get back to Achilles, who is like, I thought it would be cool if it's like the story just leaves Achilles for a while he's marching, and then we're following the other army. I would also like to, if I'm just talking about stuff I want to plan to do, I would like to characterize the sons of Eëtion more or at all, because they don't really have any personalities yet, except for Alcon, who I sort of gave a personality to. We don't even see them in these arming scenes, so I'll have to do something with that. But overall, for a first draft, we're getting a lot of nice little plot points in there. So that's that.